any other candidate if they're choosing a question. Any question, any candidate, okay? First up, Public Defender Jeff Adachi.
I have a question for Mayor Lee. You and I are the only candidates that have elected not to take public financing. And as you know, under the system, I think all the other candidates have applied for up to $900,000 in public financing. And I read your comments. I think we're similar on the points that we both said because of the city's fiscal crisis, we can't see taking $900,000 for our campaigns at this time. The question I have for you, though, is that I have agreed to stay within the spending cap to make sure that we have a level playing field. Would you today agree to stay within that spending cap?
Thank you, Jeff. But I don't have a billionaire funding my campaign, so Jeff, I do agree that when I came to this rate, I was going to raise as much money as I could from residents of this city and private individuals, and keep to all of the campaign contribution limits that the campaign requires us to do. And we'll run a clean campaign. I did limit myself and refuse to take public financing because I made those tough decisions with members of the Board of Supervisors to cut a lot of valuable programs in this city. And my heart is really with a lot of programs that we would have funded better if we had a more robust economy and the state didn't hit us as hard. We would have a lot more programs that we feel very proud of. But we made those tough decisions. We worked with all of the communities to find out the core city services that we had to keep. And we did it in cooperation with many, many neighborhoods and with members of the Board of Supervisors and the community-based agencies that provide that service. We did a very, very collaborative effort, well worth this name here of Alliance for Jobs. We found those alliances in very positive ways.
The short answer is no. Bevan, Dufty.
Michela, you authored the biotech tax credit, and when that program started, we had 2 biotech businesses in San Francisco, which has grown to 72, and I was proud to work with you and Mayor Newsom. Can you talk about how you feel that has connected to education in San Francisco, and what impacts do you see, and how do you see that in terms of other sectors we want to grow?
Thank you, Supervisor Dufty. I appreciate that question. As a member of the Board of Supervisors, it was not a setup. As a member of the Board of Supervisors, the very first thing I did on the board was to create San Francisco's very first economic plan. And what the economic plan did is it looked at potential growth, job growth opportunities for San Francisco. We went on, Bevan was, I believe, one of the co-sponsors of the biotech payroll tax exemption. He was absolutely right. When we started, we had 1 or 2 biotech companies in San Francisco, and today we have 74. For every 1 PhD position in a biotech company, we created 6 to 7 entry-level jobs. And in addition to that, we created hundreds, quite literally hundreds of building trade jobs, because the buildings themselves are massive. When we did it also in conjunction with the school district. So we had biotech classes in our high schools. Galileo has one of the best. And City College put together a biotech program as well. And so as our children were going to high school, they were learning to pick biotech as a source of interest. They were studying it. They were going on, taking those classes at City College, and then they were taking the jobs that we were actually creating here as a city. It was a wonderful model and one that we should be duplicating. Thank you for the question.
Oh, I bet. Okay, Mayor Lee.
This will be a question to former Supervisor Bevan Dufty. Supervisor Dufty, we've worked together a lot in City Hall. I know you learned a lot and delivered a lot of services to the neighborhood service program that you were heading up. We worked together to make sure Halloween was safe and that it improves year after year, to make sure that event is very positive for the area. we walked the transgender march together to make sure that people who were marginalized didn't continue feeling that way. You know, you've created a very civil tone in these mayoral debates that I've watched, and I really appreciated that. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about things that have yet to be covered in these mayoral debates that you think are important to the city of San Francisco.
Thank you, Mayor. Rather talking about the future, I want to tell you for a minute about my past.
Wait, let's go with the question.
He's asking me. He's asking me.
Right.
I'll get to it.
Okay, well, the time's out.
Roll my time back.
Okay, it's rolling.
So when I grew up, my mom worked in the civil rights movement, and she went to work in 1964 for the National Council of Negro Women. And at that time, to register to vote in New York, you had to pass a literacy test if you were black. And she worked in a storefront on 116th Street. And when I was 9 years old, that was my daycare. And I went every day and saw people from 21 to 91 learning to read at a 9th grade level. I was transformed by that experience. And it made me think how amazing it would be to be the person that these individuals voted for and believed that they could bring change. And I've been in this process my entire life, and I believe democracy is about choice. And I have faith that I can be a good candidate, and I can demonstrate what I want to do without tearing down anybody else. And that's why I like ranked choice voting, because you should be cautious for the bricks you throw, because they may bounce right back on you. Does that answer the question?
I don't know, does that answer your question? What we should be talking about that we haven't?
I think we should be talking about a black agenda, all 11 of us. And that's what I think is missing in this city, is to have an agenda on a day-to-day basis, how we're going to do that. And many of us have those experiences. Obviously, Mayor Lee, working in the civil rights movement. Obviously, Jeff Adachi, who has run a tremendous public safety agency and pulled people out of the justice system. But I believe that we have to talk about changing, not just talking in platitudes, but I can talk about what I started in Mission High School. I can talk about the work that I do with the Hunters Point Family Foundation, which is pulling young adults out of crime in public housing. And I think we need to talk about the decimation of black business, which is unprecedented in the history of San Francisco. We have lost more black businesses in the past 10 years than we've ever lost in the history of this city. And it's not just about public sector contracting, it's also about getting the private sector to do a better job, because black businesses hire people from the community to make a difference, and we need to plan.
Joanna.
I'm going to ask David Chiu. So Mayor Newsom had initiated discussions with Twitter a long time ago, and you, along with the sponsorship of Jane Kim, helped steward that legislation, the mid-market tax break, through the Board of Supervisors. Well, I view it as a Band-Aid solution where we need wholesale reform. How did you calculate what the positive economic impact would be to the city with the mid-market tax break? And do you believe that we need to take steps to have wholesale reform across the growth economy?
The quick answer to your final question is absolutely yes. And let me start by saying that for over 8 years before I ran for the Board of Supervisors, I was the founder and chief operating officer of a technology company. And we have known in recent years that many of our tech companies are leaving our city. And so when in November of last year, the CFO of Twitter told me that he was likely to leave San Francisco, we worked with the Newsom administration, and I actually called my newly elected colleague, Jane Kim, on her way to the airport as she was heading down after her election, to tell her that we needed to fix this Twitter issue. Now, the solution was not a tax break for Twitter. The solution was a tax incentive for new businesses that are creating new jobs in the Tenderloin mid-market region, which has been blighted for decades. And I think we know that if Twitter had left, that would have meant a $500,000 hit to our general coffers. With Twitter staying here, that's going to mean literally millions of dollars a year of new revenues because of the halo effect of keeping this 21st century company here. And this is why I was proud to both champion that legislation as well as legislation to make sure that companies like Zynga, like Yelp, like other startups are not the only companies in the entire country that have their stock options taxed.
What about, that's the new companies, what about the ones that have been here? What kind of breaks or help are you going to give the ones that have been paying for the streets and stuff for the last 20 or 30 years?
Ever since I served on our City Small Business Commission, and I want to thank those of you who represent the small business community here in this room, I have called for comprehensive business tax reform. We need to make sure that our 80,000 small businesses that are the lifeblood of this city, that are employing our local residences, that they also have an opportunity to thrive. And I don't think that a payroll tax that penalizes the creation of jobs, that penalizes the cost of labor, is the right way for us to go. And this is why, in this recent budget process, I supported some money so that we could hire some economists and consultants to give us a roadmap in where we need to go in the coming future.
My question is to Mr. Herera. Mr. Herera, recently I think I read somewhere that you thought that Mohammed Noor, who's the new Director of Public Works, is a bad choice. Maybe you can help me and other individuals to understand exactly why you took that position.
Thank you, Senator Rees. There was a little controversy around City Hall about that today. But listen, you can have differences of opinion. Mayor Lee and Amy Brown made a selection of Mohammed Noor to be the new interim head of DPW. It is not a pick that I happen to agree with for a variety of reasons. First, the controller has issued a blistering report several years ago with respect to the mishandling of public funds that happened under Mr. Nourou's watch. Secondly, I did a report in 2004 that indicated that Mr. Nourou had pressured city contractors to engage in political activity on city time using taxpayer dollars. That's not something I think should be countenanced. I think that we should hold the heads of our city departments, especially those that are as vital as DPW, 1,200 people, $129 million budget, $1 million budget, to the highest ethical standard. And unfortunately, Mr. Nourou's behavior over the course of the last 15 years, to me, demonstrates that he is not someone who should be put in that position of authority. I say that fully respecting the hard work that he has put in at DPW in other positions in terms of street cleaning. I just think that there are better selections which would solidify the public's trust in the integrity of government than having Mr. Nourou be the head of DPW.
Go. Dennis Herrera, your turn.
My question is for Senator Yee. Senator, the last several debates you've talked quite extensively about a proposal that you have to redo the Ethics Commission, and you've talked about your belief that power brokers are in charge of City Hall. And I kind of want to explore, number one, what you mean by that, and number two, are you advocating that we go back to the way it used to be, where the city attorney and district attorney had control of all ethical investigations? Because I don't know if I want that responsibility back in my belly. But or do you have another proposal? I'd like to hear what it is.
Let me just say that in recent months, I have seen my city being torn apart by power brokers. These are not lobbyists and so on. These are unregulated, unregistered individuals who are extremely influential in the city. They created an independent expenditure committee that the Ethics Commission said that you can, in fact, coordinate with a campaign control committee. That happened in the state of California, happened in Sacramento. The FPPC that regulates politicians come down on all of us with a ton of brick so fast that we didn't know what hit us. But somehow in San Francisco, you have these unregistered, unregulated individuals that are just simply stealing our elections, just simply trashing our ethics, our basic core as to how we run our election. And so what I am proposing is in fact a 21-point plan that is going to take politicians out of the control of the Ethics Commission, The grand jury, San Francisco grand jury, has already said that it is a sleepless watchdog. I've indicated that it is a toothless tiger. And what we need to do is to give it more power, independent power, transparent oversight in all of the regulations and all the governance of politicians and those individuals associated with that. And so having investigators that will investigate proactively rather than reactively, having the resources to kind of look into some of these issues that have been identified, those are the things that we've got to do. We've got to bring all of those power brokers under control. If not, they will continue to destroy the basis of our democracy here in San Francisco.
So who are the power brokers?
I think that as we have seen in papers, and I think, Phil, you have reported that there are individuals who are out there that are, again, as I said, they are not registered, they are not regulated. These are individuals that have access to City Hall, and they don't report. You know, when lobbyists lobby, they not only have to register that they are influencing or trying to influence politicians, they also have to kind of report as to specifically the activities related to that. They have to also talk about what kinds of campaigns they are engaged in. Power brokers don't have to do that. And so what the proposal that I have is to, again, regulate those individuals, provide some teeth to the Ethics Commission so that the Ethics Commission will no longer be appointments of politicians. They ought to be appointments of regular individuals, and then the Ethics Commission needs to be empowered by investigators and other resources so that they can, in fact, independently enforce the rules and regulations related to these political activities.
David Chiu. Question?
I have a question for Ed Lee. So Ed, about a week or two before you told the world that you were considering running for mayor, you told me that you had looked at yourself in the mirror, you didn't have the fire in the belly, you didn't want to run, but that you were having trouble saying no to Willie Brown and Rose Pack. Could you tell me what happened, what's changed in your mind over the last couple of weeks?
Thank you, Supervisor. Big surprise to announce that. No, I did change my mind, and I've talked to you about it on several occasions. I changed my mind because my working with you, Supervisor Chiu, and with all the rest of the supervisors, had given me some great hope that this city can succeed in the things that it wants to do. If we continue the high level of civility that we've accomplished and we set the tone since January, if we continue on the course of solving problems in a better civil engagement that we've conducted ourselves in, if we do the kinds of things that the public has asked us to do, not engage in misdirected public rancor, not call each other names, but to honestly work on those things of bridging the budget gap, of doing it in a way in which neighborhoods are so respectful, and community-based agencies and members of the Board of Supervisors, that for the very first time we introduced a balanced budget to the standing ovation of people that come to Room 200. That's newfound respect for the way we do government. I want to keep that up. That is what changed my mind. And people like Senator Feinstein and others who talk to me about standing up to do this, about making sure that I don't let it go, about keeping that philosophy of good government ahead of us, and keeping to get things done. That's what I've been about. That's what changed my mind, and I will do my best to continue that dialogue, that level of public service, because this city needs and wants to succeed in everything it does. And I'm so glad that we're here at the Alliance for Jobs, because that's what you want to have out of your city government.
Mr. Mayor, while we're still doing better in terms of unemployment, job creation is still a major issue, obviously, because we're all here tonight. Can you tell us about your plan for high-wage jobs here in San Francisco in the coming years?
Thank you, Phil. Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Phil, because you, as assessor recorder, have worked outside of the box. Not only have you done a good job in collecting our revenue, but I welcomed in and I embraced this whole Gold Solar program that you've done. It's a wonderful program because it created new types of jobs, the kind of jobs that Mission Bay, after the leadership of Mayor Brown and certainly Mayor Gavin Newsom, when they helped create the foundation for these new tech jobs and life science jobs, we have embraced that, and that's our new economy. And so working along the same themes, a mayor has to make sure these deals are done. And with the new tech companies, I've been working with Supervisor Mark Farrell, Supervisor David Chiu, of course, Supervisor Mergarimi and others, have come in and said we need to dialogue with our tech companies. We need to form the Technology Advisory Committee, which we did months ago, right after the Twitter settlement was made, because they wanted in on the way the city functions so that they can help change it to make it more business-friendly and job-friendly. And one of the first things that we've agreed to do, again, with Supervisor Chiu's concurrence and the board, is to look at the way our payroll tax system works, because it's right now job punishing, when we should be at the opposite of job creation and job sustaining. So that will be a basis upon the new technology, but it's also listening to the technology companies' advice, because they're forming some brand new products that we need to advertise.
Over the time.
Okay, but I'm excited about this.
All right.
Tony Hall.
Thank you, Phil. You know, Phil, I've got too much respect for this audience out here tonight to be playing part of a mutual admiration society or pitching softball or gotcha questions. That's not my style. You know, folks, I've been in this business over 35 years as an executive in 9 different city departments. Everybody knows where I stand as a conservative, moderate, whatever you want to call me, liberal, I don't care where I stand on creating jobs, business, and home ownership. But I'd like to direct this question, if I can, to the audience. Okay? It's a rhetorical question. I want you to go home and think tonight about the biggest crisis that I've seen, and you're going to witness in your lifetime, this pension tsunami coming your way. This is going to be a $12 billion problem within 5 to 6 years. Twice as big as our current budget, 6 times bigger than the budget that Frank Jordan ran this city with. You're going to be without services. We're going to be facing bankruptcy. I do not understand why I'm the only one up here talking about complete and fundamental pension reform that revamps and recreates the whole system. If we don't do that, if we adhere to one plan by Ed Lee, which was a union-dictated plan, or we go to Adachi's plan, which is only going to save maybe 10% of what we need, we're going to be in trouble, folks. So I want you to go home tonight and think about this, because it's your city. I'll carry the flag. I'll correct it for you. I know how to correct it. With your help, we can get out of this mess. We won't hit that wall that I talked about. Help me get there. Go home and think about this question. It's the most important question that you're going to be faced with tonight. Thank you.
Question?
I'm going to direct my question to Supervisor Dufty. Bevan and I have a number of things in common, but probably the biggest is that we both have 5-year-olds.
Oh, yes.
And so we have talked a lot and shared a lot about what it means to raise a family in San Francisco and how we can help encourage our middle class to stay in San Francisco. Now, that's not where my question's going. The other day, I was at the LGBT Center down at the bottom floor, and I was talking to about 10 people who were playing games. And they were all retirees. And their question to me was, why is it that you're always talking about families, and why is it that you're always talking about young people? I think it's very important that we do. But they said, what about us? And it is something that we don't focus enough about. Bevan had mentioned that we don't focus enough about the issues related to African Americans. But the fact of the matter is, too, is that this is a city with over 52% people over the age of 50. And we don't talk enough about it. And one of the conversations I had focused a lot on the new Project 55 Laguna, which is specifically for LGBT retirees. And then we also voted and built the Goldman Center for Aging on Geary Street. And so my question here is, what are we going to do for our aging population? The issues regarding living in place, so that you can live in a home and stay there for the rest of your life. And their healthcare and their healthcare benefits. Here we are, the Alliance for Jobs and Sustainable Growth, and probably one of the biggest issues in front of us is the CPMC rebuild and how we're going to deal with healthcare in San Francisco. And so, Bevan,
thank you.
Here you go.
Thank you, Michela. The fastest growing segment of San Francisco's population are people over the age of 85. And so I do believe that the next mayor is going to have to create a master plan to focus on some of the issues that Michela's question draws out. I do want to take a minute and reflect on the fact that the seniors that Michela was seeing at the LGBT Center face difficult choices. If you think about people that are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, when they came out, it wasn't easy. And most individuals immediately lost contact with their families. Many of these individuals have lost partners to the AIDS epidemic. And so to age now and to face the possibility that you could go into a senior facility that's not culturally competent, that could mean after years of being out and risking so much in your life that you'd be forced to go back in the closet. And I think that's unacceptable, and I think that's why Open House fought so hard for 55 Laguna. But the things that we've got to address involve adult day health centers. We've seen some dramatic cuts at the state level, which are affecting the Bayview Adult Day Health Center and having an impact on people having that engagement and activity that keeps them well. Our in-home care workers, it's a very important system that we have, and San Francisco has really led the way in providing health coverage and proper compensation for those individuals who provide in-home care. And I think part of what we really need to do is to have a dialogue and educate the public, because we save so much money as a result of having people being able to live with dignity in their homes. And then I would simply say that paratransit is a huge issue for many people, and that we don't have a dedicated funding stream. So I definitely think that as mayor, my priority would be to bring people together and to create a master plan, because that growth in that segment is a huge issue for San Francisco.
John Avalos.
I have a question for the public defender, and it's actually not related to pension reform. I actually really have admired your work as a public defender, and you and I have had agreements and some disagreements, mostly agreements on how we handle budgeting and how we do the work. But your perspective is really important as a public defender, working with people who are involved in street life and crime, and your work trying to make sure that they can get out of that life. What do you see as the root causes of why people get involved in crime, and what is your response? What would your response be as mayor to be able to get the root causes of crime in our streets?
Good question.
Thank you for your question. I've spent my entire career in criminal justice, and the reason I've chosen this field is because it gives you the opportunity to turn people's lives around. That's really why we love doing what we do. People get into trouble, they get in the courts. There's a reason why. It could be alcohol, it could be abuse, it could be violence. All of these things contribute to what a person becomes. And so there's two things that we need to do. We need to make sure that we prevent, as much as possible, things that are going to adversely impact the young person. And that's why I've championed programs, as you have, Supervisor Avalos, that would help young people to turn their lives around and stay out of trouble. The second thing is that for people who are getting out of jail, who are getting out of prison, and we have 33,000 people who are going to be released in October. What are we going to do about that? What's the plan? I have worked on reentry programs that provide education, employment, drug treatment to people coming out, and intensive case management. That's going to be the challenge that San Francisco is going to face. When we talk about public safety, it means everybody's safety. And if we can help people turn their lives around, break down barriers, as I have through our Clean Slate program, and help people clear their records so they can find work, that's what I will do as mayor, and I look forward to working with everybody on that.
Now it's my turn. Question for everyone. This goes